to meet our shared goal, which is to ensure that we start the school year in RSU 100% in-class attendance. So that is like to mention that we certainly feel very strongly about that goal and are going to take whatever steps we need to take to ensure that we reach it. I had some comments. And respectfully and respect others' opinions as well as we get into. The format of the meeting is simply we're going to turn the meeting over to Patrick and Katie Joseph. We will talk about the school update or update the school opening plans, including full testing, distancing, and the issue of masking for sure. We do remotely have our consultant position online who will join us during that period, Dr. Hannah, who will answer big press, make a statement of her own, and then if there's an opportunity for the board to ask questions both of administration and of Dr. Hannah, and then we'll move on to public comment. And we will turn the meeting over to you essentially and listen to your views on this issue. So with that, I'd like to Patrick.
So as you know, the purpose tonight is really focused on this indoor masking, but it felt it was important for us to go over the other components of our reopening plan, which Katie Joseph will do in just a minute. But before she does that, I just wanted to know that we are in weekly
actually not preclude us from having a school workforce like we did last year. So there is definitely more flexibility, and the reason for that is there are many other related mechanisms for ensuring students will be able to be safe. For instance, if they opt into physical testing, we have hand-hygiene protocols going on throughout the day. We have our ventilation list to change and all of those things. In terms of hand hygiene, and cleaning and disinfecting, we will still have touch points throughout the day where students are required to wash their hands. Some of them are encouraged to wash their hands. Obviously, entering the building and leaving the building as well as around evening time to be the most common of those are happening. So, for cleaning and disinfecting, I think the most important pieces here would be that our custodial staff will continue to clean catch-up surfaces as well as before and after cleaning happens on these surfaces throughout the day, in addition to their normal routines for cleanliness. For ventilation, many of you will remember last year we sent out a letter about the installation of the ionization equipment that we have done, as well as the increased frequency of changing out air filters. That's also in place, and we'll maintain those practices of the frequency of changing filters, and also we ask teachers and bus drivers to keep windows open, as long as it's possible to do so to increase ventilation. In terms of vaccinations, vaccinations are not required. However, we do strongly encourage them to keep everybody safe. We will be offering additional vaccine clinics through NICOs later in the fall and winter when they're able to use those. And as per the declaration of public health emergency, we are required in all schools in Maine this year to collect the status of vaccination from employees and students that can be reported to the state. It will be reported in a de-identified manner, meaning the state won't know who's made the pass, it was the overall percentages. Pool testing, we've had many long meetings throughout this last term, so I'm going to go into the smallest detail right now, but that is the program we will be putting in place next year that students and staff can opt into. It's not a requirement. Essentially, it will be weekly testing done, a rapid test to ensure that we're able to carry out the school and not have to quarantine staff and students should there be a COVID case. This is a state recommended procedure. That's one of the layers of safety that many schools will be putting in place this year. In terms of transportation, right now in Maine, requiring public transportation that everyone be masked, and so we go on there and speaker as the state requirement until that changes. And also encourage to have windows open on the bus as well. We no longer have to have one student to a seat, so we will be able to increase the number of students on our buses this year and have students to a seat who aren't necessarily from the same family as was required last year. For athletics, we'll continue to provide all activities and athletic programming as per what is allowed by the DOE and also the Maine Principals Association guidelines, which is the group that oversees athletics. For distance learning, we will continue to have distance learning. It will be in a much smaller capacity. When we surveyed all of our families last year, we only had, I would say, about 20 who wanted to opt into distance learning. And all of those cases would be for medical needs of the student who came out or some terms of opening up our doors entirely to anybody, we are moving towards not doing that again this year, so to keep the amount of contact tracing more manageable for our nurses. So we will be able to have pre-planned events and conversations and meetings with families, but we'll also be using phone and using more Google Meet conversations as well, just to make sure that our foot traffic in the building stays where we need to go. Field trips will be happening next year, as long as they're related to the curriculum and officers were able to follow our health and safety procedures at whatever facility for them. And I think that's it for right now. The one piece that other than that thing we forgot to talk about, which we're not very able to detail about, is new meeting, because those recommendations will be coming from the Department of Education, and they may be updated. So we will update you on those as soon as we're there.
So at this point, we have Dr. Anna, who's our consulting physician for the district. She's out there someplace, hopefully we have a face up on the screen. And she is going to provide some information, some data on COVID in general, but also about masks, and provide her recommendations for the school district, but also pre-year, so that after she's done the work in that session.
Thanks for inviting me back for this meeting. So I'll start off with giving just a little bit of an update of what is happening with COVID in our county and in our state. So as you probably all saw on Friday, Saginaw County moved into the substantial transmission category. Most of Maine is either in substantial or high transmission. I think Quebec is still moderate. So, the rates of COVID-19 infections have definitely increased. Our last school board meeting that I was at was back in June, and that was that wonderful time when we were seeing, many days with 0 COVID cases in our county. But the past couple of weeks, that definitely has changed. Right now, I looked today, we've got an average of 28 cases, or we have 28 cases, new cases in Saginaw County in the past week. And if you look at the trajectory of infections, hospitalizations, and ventilator use in our state, you can see the steady upward marching of the numbers. And that's not just in adults. We're seeing kids who are sick. We're seeing kids, including kids who are requiring critical care. So things are different than where we were in June. The cases that they sequenced here in Maine are largely the Delta variant, so 86% of what they sequenced is the Delta variant. And as I think all of you have heard in the news, Delta is that variant that is highly transmissible, not twice as transmissible as the type that we were dealing with a year ago. So we're definitely in a different position than we were. And I say all of this, but I don't want to frighten you. You're in Maine, and Maine, you're lucky to be here, but we are in an upward trajectory here. But we're not someplace down south. But we are increasing. We are seeing this highly transmissible variant, and that's most of what we're seeing here. In terms of protections against this, if you look at vaccination rates, again, Maine is doing pretty well with our vaccination rates. Again, I feel very lucky to be here, but we're not quite where we need to be. As of today, when I looked at the Maine CDC site in Saginaw County, 52% of our 12 to 15-year-olds were fully vaccinated, and 61% of our 16 to 19-year-olds were fully vaccinated. So while that's a great number, it's not. It leaves a lot of kids unprotected. And kids under the age of 12 are not eligible for a vaccine yet. They have not given a date on when that will be available. one thing to keep in mind for when that vaccine is released for those younger kids, it does take a little while before you're fully immunized. It's basically 5 weeks from the time you get your first dose to getting your second dose to 2 weeks after that second dose before you're considered fully immunized. So there, even after the disease, there's still period of time of vulnerability for the younger kids in our district. So, and again, I can answer questions about all of this. I'm just trying to not take up too much time here for you guys, but just to kind of give you a little bit of an overview of what's going on. Also, since our visit, our meeting in June, there were some policy changes among different organizations nationwide. First, the American Academy of Pediatrics came out with a very firm recommendation for universal masking for adults and kids, students, teachers, staff, everybody indoors in the school setting. And then in July, the CDC also changed its recommendation to mirror that. So everyone, and that was regardless of vaccination status, so that everyone should be masked while indoors in schools. Wasn't a mandate, but it was a strong recommendation. And I think that was largely based on, again, seeing the spread of the Delta variant, the impact it's having on younger populations. So those were two changes. And then more recently, the Maine Department of Education also came out with a discussion about masking that basically said, and again, it goes back to the effectiveness of masking, but basically said that if a school has a mandatory masking policy, an exposed classroom student does not need to quarantine if they were able to maintain that 3 feet of distance and didn't have direct physical contact. But again, I think some of these other bigger organizations are sending us messages that masking really is the safest option. There was a question, and I work with West Bath, and I actually may have come from West Bath, but there was a question about the effectiveness of masks. So I'm going to bring it up here because it may have actually been here as well. But anyway, there was a good article in the Journal of the American Medical Association that kind of pulled together a bunch of studies looking at effectiveness of masks. And if you can search it online, but basically they looked at multi-layer cloth masks and the reduction in exhaled small droplets and particles. And there was in those multi-layer cloth masks, 50 to 70% reduction in the exhaled small droplets and particles. And then they also looked at a study that they had done during a COVID-19 outbreak on the USS Theodore Roosevelt, and people who wore masks had a 70% lower risk of contracting COVID-19. So those are just a couple of those, the studies that just show the effectiveness of masking. So that's just some of the, the science. Back in June, I did recommend that we start the school year with a mask mandate or a mask requirement in place because we know that it worked last year, and I think our primary goal should be to get the kids back in school and learning full time and keep them in school. I know that this decision about masks it's tough. There are a lot of emotions on both sides. I'm a mother of an RSU1 student. I'm a pediatrician to a lot of kids in this community. And the Delta variant has me worried. But despite that worry, I really still feel that we can safely have kids back in school, that we can do this, we can have them back full time. But we need to use some of the strategies from last year that we know worked. We used masks, we can use distancing where possible, we use hygiene, and then we add on those other interventions that are now available to us with pooled testing and vaccinations. And we can do this to keep kids safe and keep kids in school. One thing that I did want to address, because I think this was a big component last time, about the decision regarding masks, and it was regarding the mental health of our kids. And as a pediatrician,
and a year ago, I commented that I was seeing a significant issue with mental health in kids, and I still do in my practice. It, Kids really need to be in school, and they need to be in school consistently. They need to see their peers. They need to have that support of their teachers, the school staff, the counselors there, the coaches. That whole safety net that helps them with their mental health. But the way we do that is by keeping them in school. And if kids are having to miss school because they are exposed and must quarantine, or they're exposed and they get sick and they have to be out for a period of time, we then have done them a disservice because they are once again isolated at home. So I know this decision about masks is tough, but it is a way to create a safe physical environment for our kids, while also giving them that mental health support that they desperately need after this past year of disruptions. So that's kind of my statement. I can answer questions if you would like.
Okay, thanks, thanks, Dr. Hannah. So I'm going to open it to the board. Any question? Well, just let me finish. Okay. Just any questions of either Dr. Hannah or Katie at this point in her presentation too. So go ahead, Lou.
Dr. Hannah, hi, it's Lou. When you mentioned the rates of the kids who are eligible, the 12 to 15 and the 16 to 19, and you say they're good, but, not good enough. What I'm trying to understand is if we were to go back with a mask mandate, do we know yet? Because, we're not Georgia. We have a much higher vaccination rate than Georgia did. They didn't stand a chance there, but we're doing better. I understand cases are going up, but is there some kind of threshold that either doctors or scientists are looking at to say, after X number of weeks, if cases are at a certain level or dropping, if a certain percentage within a school building of eligible vaccinated staff and students are at X, this would be that's when it would be safe to say masks are optional. I mean, I see this as, if COVID's going to be here a while, this may be more of a dynamic 2 months on, 2 months off, monitoring all the time, just, trying to keep it so that it's reasonable with going with science, but not just saying, okay, it's masks for the rest of the year, no matter what happens. So I'm just wondering if there is a threshold moment that we, at this point, know of. I know it can change, there could be new variants, but I'm just trying to understand what that might look like.
Yeah, so I think your point is right. I think that we should not be looking at going into the school year and saying, okay, we've made a decision for masks and we're never going to revisit that. I don't think that's the right decision either. In terms of what our threshold is for being able to get rid of masks, I think it's a bit of a moving target. So if you look at, you're right, Georgia, those poor kiddos did not stand a chance. But if we look very close to us in Vermont, who actually did very well, their governor is requiring masks and stating that masks are going to be required until they have an 80% vaccination rate of kids. I think that that's one component of what we're looking at, though. So we want a good high vaccination rate, but the other component is, and again, it's because Delta has kind of turned what we thought we knew about COVID on our ear, but it also depends upon what circulating strain is out there and whether or not how transmissible it is, how effective the vaccines are. And so I feel reluctant for me to give like a specific, this is our criteria. I think this is largely going to be led by CDC recommendations and input, and not just national CDC as they're looking, across the country, but our main CDC, which I think has given us good guidance. So I wish I could give you a more accurate answer of, hey, let's hit this benchmark and then we can get rid of these. But I also want to continue working with the school to figure out when that moment is that we can get rid of the masks. I, I, I don't want this to be a situation where we just say, put them on and never think about it again.
Okay, thanks. Other board questions? Yep, Lorna?
Hi, Dr. Hannah. Thanks for coming back. My comments or questions dovetail Lou's, and so that's been covered in some way, that as we talk about this, is it realistic for us to talk about benchmarks? Because what really has my attention, other than this, is continuity of education and disruption, which you've already talked about. And so we've got vaccines available for some families won't choose that, some families will never choose that. We have the young kids who have no vaccine options right now, and families want that option. But we also have things that we've talked about, like pooled testing. So if that could even be worked into some metrics, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, that's kind of our job, to give people some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, understanding the Lambda variant could take off. Hopefully not. But could we talk about pooled testing as another metric? Right now, we don't really know who's going to opt in. I was going to ask you, Katie, when that letter might go out for opting in. But I think that's important as we toss this idea around, with the goal of keeping kids in school 100%. I mean, last year, that looked pretty bleak. So thank goodness we're looking at 100% this year. And then another few quick ones. The timeline for vaccinations, we don't know for the younger kids. Maybe late fall, but I also read some articles, maybe early winter. So again, that could be another benchmark. Do we do something until that's at least available for families who want it? And then, as far as your questions, Dr. Hannah. Oh, I'm just curious if you know, the CDC does do youth data. It's not super, it's only once a month. So do you have any inside information on why the youth data that they have takes a month to come out?
I don't. I'm not sure why the CDC takes a month to put that out there. I don't know. I am on various COVID meeting groups that are pediatricians across the state, including infectious disease and critical care, and so I think I get to hear some of this information that's out there. But yeah, I don't know why it takes so long for it to be posted.
I'm wondering if it's because we haven't been in school, but you know, even since our last meeting, it hasn't changed all that much. But again, we haven't been in school either, in fairness, so that could change. We could see the uptick there. So for you, Dr. Hannah, I think that's it. I just wanted to kind of jump on what Lou said, that as we consider this, could we also consider maybe some benchmarks and not just do this full school year declaration? And then Katie.
Was that question for me about the benchmarks, or was that for the board? I couldn't tell, I'm sorry.
I guess it was for you, and that just with pool testing, could that also be something we could look at as a level of another, if things are getting better? Once we start getting that rolling, you know, maybe we're starting to get some more positive feedback from that, if it does in fact take hold and people participate.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, you're looking at the different layers of protection, and I think that pooled testing is just one more of those layers of protection. You know, right now, the benchmark for the Department of Education to consider a pooled testing worthwhile is a 30% participation rate, which is not huge. And, you know, even if you had 60% participation rate, that's 40% of kids who would then need to quarantine if there was a positive case in a classroom, as opposed to following a masking guideline, a masking requirement, and then the Department of Education, because masks are so effective, the Department of Education then would allow those kids who are not involved in the pooled testing to still remain in the classroom if they had been masked, if there was a mask requirement. So, I mean, again, it just gives us another way to keep kids in the classroom and keep all kids in the classroom, not just those who are participating in the pooled testing. So,
Okay.
but tying a benchmark for eliminating masks to the results of our pooled testing, is that what you were asking?
No, I'm sorry. I just meant as another layer.
Oh,
I
okay.
just meant, because we talked about vaccination rates, but then
Right.
I'm also saying what other, just kind of asking if there were, if we had determined some kind of participation in pool testing, and then, in order to, start the year masking, but seeing what kind of progress we make with all these other layers. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and I think we should constantly be looking at this. I mean, if we find that, and I hope this is the case, but I don't know that this will be the case, but if Delta fizzles and suddenly our rates are dropping again, and then I think we should revisit this. But I think that we need to go in very cautiously, because the consequences for the kids of having to quarantine for 10 days or to get infected and then to have to isolate for that period of time, and then and the concerns with the long COVID symptoms and things of that nature. I think if we can get them back safely, and we can revisit this in the future when things look different. But right now, I would not recommend starting school without a mask requirement.
That was it for me. Thank you.
And just to answer your pool testing question, we should have something out definitely within the first week before school starts to get all the information back. And it likely will be electronic, so we have immediate results. We don't have to wait for a paper return. So we're on track with our timeline for that.
Okay, thanks, Lorna. Yep, Jen?
Hello, Dr. Hanna, and thank you for all of your assistance and information you provide the board. I really appreciate it. My question today is about the screening questions that we ask specifically for young unvaccinated children. I've been trying to read and understand a little bit about what the Delta impact is for that demographic in terms of respiratory issues. And so do you have any suggestions on what kind of screening questions or screening, it was easier with COVID because it was a fever. I think there were some easy tracking things that we could ask, but I don't personally understand how different the Delta variant is than COVID was for young children last year. And I'm just trying to understand better the impact it has for that age demographic and how it presents.
Sure. It largely presents in a very similar way with, the headache, the fever, cough, congestion. So those symptoms are very much the same. With the Delta variant, they are seeing a little less of the loss of taste or smell than the other variants that have come before it. So those are largely the same. I think what has changed for Delta, number one, there's, it's as with everything COVID, it's a relatively new variant. And some of the studies coming out from other countries suggest that it is causing more severe disease in adults and in younger adults. But they're still looking at it in kids. But what they do know with Delta is that you have this highly transmissible variant, so you're getting a lot more people infected. So if you say a certain percentage of people who get diagnosed with COVID are going to be sick, but you have 100 people, that small percentage is, that's going to be very few people. But if you have 1,000 people and it's that same percentage, that's a lot. It's a lot more people who are getting sick. But they are still looking at how it is in terms of severity with kids. I think that there's a lot of information that we desire that we're still kind of waiting on. But when we're doing screening questions, those symptoms that we're looking for will largely remain the same. The Department of Education, I was on a meeting on Friday, and I believe that they are updating their symptom screener to be much more general, so that those questions, they kind of capture a lot more, and make it, basically make it so that if you're not feeling well, let's just not go to school. I mean, I do think that they're trying to make it a little, um, a less specific, or that was my understanding. And I don't know if they've released it, or at least I think they're going to be releasing it soon.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Thanks, Dr. Hannah. Yeah, Jamie?
Hi, Dr. Hannah. I know that there is not a date yet for children under the age of 12 to get a vaccine. And I was a little surprised at how low the numbers are for teenagers that are eligible. I was wondering if you could talk about maybe some of the reasons why parents might be hesitating or children are hesitating, and then talk about the safety and effectiveness of that vaccine.
Sure. Yeah. So in terms of our low number, I think that just in general, we are seeing an increase in just vaccine hesitancy with all vaccines, which is unfortunate. Um, so I think that may be a component of it. I do think that for some families, the fact that this is under emergency use authorization may be playing a part in their decision to get the vaccine. Others may have a belief that it's just not going to affect them, that their child's going to be that kid who's just going to have a mild case and not have severe symptoms at the time of the infection, and not have symptoms of long COVID, where they have symptoms that persist for weeks after an infection. And that's a gamble. Maybe you're lucky and maybe you're not, which is frightening. So I think that those two things are probably playing a part. I don't think it's access, because I do feel like we've been pretty lucky here in Maine, where kids can go to multiple different places to get the vaccine. They can go to, the vaccine clinic at Midcoast Hospital, but they can also get it in various pharmacies around. And so I'm not, I don't know why we don't have a higher rate specifically, but I think that those are some of the components that are going into it. In terms of safety, so this technology is not new. So this was technology that they had looked at for other vaccines, but these mRNA vaccinations have to be kept in a very cold environment. So when you're looking at using it for smaller numbers of vaccines, it doesn't make sense. But when you're using it in a widespread situation like this, it does make a lot of sense. And the nice thing about this is that you can make minor changes to it to target different proteins. So it does allow us some flexibility to make changes faster if we need to, if there are variants. And the other thing with this vaccine is that we now have the luxury of seeing how it has worked in millions of people. And for other vaccines, it has taken a long time to get to that point to look at effectiveness and safety. But we have, obviously we're in the middle of a pandemic, so we've got lots of people who have had this vaccine, and we've been able to look at the safety. And they've been tracking safety. So I know that when I got my vaccine back when it was first available for healthcare providers, there was a questionnaire that you could sign up for. And so they sent you a kind of a health evaluation every day for a week, and then it was weekly for a while. And now it's monthly. I get a questionnaire just asking, any health concerns, anything that's changed, and they're looking at it in all different ways, including, like, have you become pregnant? Have you, so they're looking at this as an ongoing process. I'm a mother. I'm a pediatrician second. I'm a mother first. When the vaccine became available for my son's age group, I was sitting in a parking lot, logged in trying to get a spot for him because I wanted him to get that vaccine so badly. I so wanted him to be protected against the wild type of COVID. And he got it. Both my sons are vaccinated. So I hope that helps people feel more reassured that as a mother, I felt that passionately about it to give it to my own kids.
Okay, thanks. Lou, do you have another question?
I have a question for Katie. Katie, when you were talking about, obviously, that for we said we're not requiring vaccines. If the FDA takes it off the emergency, whatever, have you heard anything from the state as to whether there's going to be a push for some kind of requirement, or that if you choose not to get it, you'd have to wear a mask? Or I don't know. I just wondered where our state is on that, because I know universities are starting to require things, and I just wondered what the state's telling us, if anything.
Patrick, feel free to jump in here too, but as you know, we always follow whatever the state required student immunizations are. And so until the state changes that requirement, individual districts are unlikely to make those requirements of their own staff or students. I think in general, that's what the public districts in Maine do. And there's no update on whether, there would be a requirement anytime soon. No.
Okay, thanks, Lou. Any other questions of either? Yep, Lorna?
I just want to, I had another one for Katie, but I don't want to take away from public comment. But it's just a quick question on people coming in school. And we don't even have to debate it now, but it's on my radar. So I understand minimizing foot traffic in the schools, but our PTAs were pretty much grounded last year. And if I'm very excited to hear that we're going to support or allow essential field trips. But where PTAs are so critical in supporting a lot of those, I hope we can work with the PTAs on finding a balance there.
Yeah, that shouldn't be a problem. So for field trips and anything instructional, for a science night or what night, as long as the procedures are followed, those are the sort of activities we'd like to resume so life can be as normal and joyful as possible for kids and for families involved.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? No? Okay, I just, Dr. Hannah, you're still there, I guess, right? Yep. Nope, yep. And Katie both, just to put a hypothetical out there, just so I understand. Obviously, what's being recommended by CDC and DOE and you, Dr. Hannah, and the administration is kind of a layered approach to this with distancing, vaccinations, obviously, where we can have them, and masking. So what we did encounter last year, very unfortunate, obviously, is where you have one child who is infected, who tests positive in a classroom. It affects the entire classroom. What we ran into last year as well, it infects staff, instructional staff, and other staff, and we end up closing the classroom. Or in the case of Woolwich, we had to close Woolwich for I think a week, I believe, right? Several days, just because of a couple of infections, and we did not have coverage. But with this layered approach, we can avoid those kinds of closures. We don't have to shut down an entire classroom if there's a single child infected. Is that right? Am I hearing you correctly on that? So.
Would you like to respond first, Dr. Hannah, or would you like me to?
Yeah, I think either one of us. I think that this pertains to kids, though. I think that if the mask policy is in place, and this is if I read it correctly, but if the mask policy is in place, that it makes it so that if you have other kids in a classroom and you have one child who's positive, or you have the teacher who's positive, the other kids in the classroom, if there's a mask policy, do not need to then miss school. They don't have to quarantine. They can continue to attend school. I don't think that, and Katie, you probably know this, but I don't know that the Department of Education policy extends to adults or teachers. Do you know?
It just those who are unvaccinated.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
If I could just add, other than masking, also opting into the pooled testing is of all of the layers of safety, those are the two elements that would actually stop quarantining from happening for any person in the school building.
Yeah, I meant to mention pool testing, but didn't, because we haven't started it yet. We have no experience, but you're right. Yep, thank you. And just to reiterate, make sure everyone understands, pool testing is a voluntary activity both. And does the 30% apply to students and instructional staff, or? Yes. So it's 30% of the entire population of the building? Okay.
It's 30% of the entire population of a building, so not the district overall. So we'll do our percentages by building, include students and staff. And it's recommended both for the vaccinated and the unvaccinated.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Dr. Hannah. Thanks for being with us yet again. Are there any other questions? No. If not, okay. Thanks. I don't know if you're going to stay with us, Dr. Hannah, but you're certainly welcome to do it. We now are going to move to the public comment section of the meeting, and I do want to just say a couple of things, because I'm just going to take a guess and feel many of you have not attended our meetings previously or participated in public comment before the board. Just first and foremost, this isn't an opportunity to debate or even a conversation. It's an opportunity for you to present your views, your comments to us. So we're going to sit here and listen to you. We're not necessarily going to respond to what you say. We will take note, certainly, of what you say, and it will factor in when we come around to making a decision on this. I didn't say this at the onset, but just to be sure everyone understands, we don't intend to vote on this issue tonight. This is just an opportunity to hear from the administration, from Dr. Hannah, and to hear from you, the public, on this. So what we'd like to happen again, and could I just get a show of hands? How many folks would like to speak and present to the board? Okay. Okay. Not everybody. I'm going to ask. I'm not going to set a time limit, but I'm going to ask that you kind of police yourselves. If you can hold your comments to 3 minutes to 5 minutes. I mean, without counting, it's a show of hands. If we limit to 5 minutes, it might take an hour to get through all the public comments. If comments are briefer than that, then that's fine. We ask that as you approach the mic, and you can line up if you want once we start. If you just give us your name and the town that you're from, and that's just to go into the record. Again, please try to be succinct to the extent. I know everyone wants to say something their own way, and that's fine. But to the extent that you have comments that are, repeat what other people have said, it's okay to say, well, I agree with everything that Mary said or that John said. That's fine. Again, this is an opportunity for us to hear from you. We're not going to get into a conversation with you. We're not going to debate your points, but again, we're interested to know what your views are. We did open the opportunity to address the board. You could either come in person, which you all have elected to do, or to send in comments. We did receive many comments, 45 in total. And if you just bear with me, and I'm sorry if I ruined some of the names, but I would just like to acknowledge the people who sent comments in. We heard from Nick and Kate Bergman, Erwin Gross, Sarah Masajewski, Kelly Marshall, Rachel Butenot, Ashley Seymour, Keely Colby, Leanne Smith, Noel Tagg, Angie Davini, Christy Becker Varney, Abigail Luchis. Again, if I ruin names, I apologize. Krista Walker, Eileen Harkins, Kristen Matsky, Suki Hurd, Erwin Gross again, and Martha Folger, Sarah Matsky, Kirsten Haywood, Adam Dean, Maureen Semikowski, Timothy Brosnahan, Abby and Eric Pearson, Melissa Kindelman, Anita Lichman, Steve McKay, Larissa Costello, Linda from Woolwich, Jill Valancourt, Jess Irish, Alice O'Melia, Andrew Jawitz, Sam Jawitz, John Lever, Meg Barker, Patsy Fry Davis, Summer Irish Dean, Deb Keller, Rebecca Abate Marco, Clementine Kavanaugh, Andrew Kenny, Jason and Sheila LaMontagne, Jenna and Stephen Sinclair, Susie Arnold, Amanda Walden, and Rebecca Porter. Those are the folks who sent in comments, and we appreciate those comments that you submitted, much as we appreciate you all showing up to give us comments here tonight. So that said, please, again, we're, to the extent that you can, I don't want to have anyone abbreviate their comments beyond what they would like to say, but to the extent that you can be succinct in your comments, we would appreciate that. So with that said, if you want to come to the mic again, give us your name and town. Okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Larry Bartlett, Bath, Maine. I have a very brief statement that I'd like to read. If I don't read it, I'll ramble, and that wouldn't serve any purpose. So thanks for all the work that you have done. It's been a difficult year for sure, and I appreciate all the work that the school board's done on the behalf of students. So I'm speaking in favor of masks for the fall. I propose that you take on protection of those who are unable to take precautionary measures themselves. As you've heard, at this time, students under the age of 12 are not eligible for this protection, the protection of vaccination. We must therefore do whatever we can to provide the highest degree of protection that we can, which includes wearing masks. On July 28th, the US CDC recommended universal indoor masking for all teachers, staff, students, and visitors to schools, regardless of vaccination status. This was repeated on the Maine Department of Education website on August 5th, and again, as well on the Maine CDC website on August 12th. So I guess the question would be, why would a school board decide to take actions that aren't consistent with the US CDC, the Maine CDC, and the Department of Ed. There are lots of people who have opposing opinions, I'm sure, dealing with the pandemic, but I'm hoping that you listen to what the authorities have to say and follow their recommendations. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Suzanne Carr. I have a son who's going to be starting in kindergarten at Dyke Newell. I'm also a physician in the community. I'm a family doc. And I feel like I echo what he said about kids who can't be vaccinated. And if they're wearing, there was a great study that was done by pediatric infectious disease and pediatricians at Duke, because North Carolina had a mask mandate. They published that study. They had compared to states that didn't have a mask mandate, the rate of transmission to children was exceedingly low. And I think we have to look at kids as, this whole community is an organism, and we don't know who our children are going home to. We don't know, like our kids, although the rate of hospitalization at children right now is 2.4%, that's higher than it was. This variant, and maybe the next variant, we don't know, is going to affect kids a lot more. We don't know, but this variant is. And we don't know who our kids are going home to. So our kids who can't be vaccinated may be going home to an immunocompromised parent, grandparent, guardian, and we have an obligation as part of the community to protect all of those people. I want my child in school. I want all kids in school, but I want them to wear a mask. And my 5-year-old thinks nothing of wearing a mask. I think most of the kids do nowadays. They just want to be in school and they want to learn and they want to be around other kids. So, I'm advocating for that and advocating for the school having less work of contact tracing. That's a lot of work. I know we do it in my office. It's terrible. And as far as pooled testing, I have to say from a scientific standpoint, once a week with only 30%, maybe you're going to get some data, but you're not going to protect anybody that way. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
Hi,
I'm sorry.
my name's Regina Martin, and I have 3 teenagers attending Morse. I've worked in the school system for 20 years. I'm going to date myself here. I worked at the Second Chance High School when that was going on in Bath. I went to Bath schools myself. I now have my children here. I've substitute taught on and off for the last over a decade and taught at Bangor High School, Poland High School, all over. One thing I've learned from K to 12, children are tremendously malleable, and they're also altruistic. I have a compromised 18-month-old. We have fought to keep him alive. My children would do anything to protect him. We have had the burden of hospital stays, having our family separated. None of you want that burden. None of you want to leave your babies at home to stay with a baby in the hospital. Trust me, you don't want to have your toddler crying at home while you're in the hospital with a loved one. It's hell. No one wants that. The school provides services for all types of children, physically disabled, mentally disabled. Education requirements are shifted and changed to adapt to students of all needs. I myself have catered to the needs of children struggling in math. I have totally de-escalated children losing their mind for over an hour, disrupting a classroom. Children support children. They want to help each other. I see it every day. All teachers do. They want to protect one another like my 3 children want to protect their little brother. My children also want to stay in school all year. I assure you that if all of you could see a picture of my son, and I said, if you wore a mask, you could protect him, you would wear one. If you knew him, who wouldn't? So I ask you, as a person who has catered to the needs of so many children in RSU1, I've supported your children through hardships. I've supported your children when they can't pick themselves up off the playground. I've coached them in soccer, encouraged them when they felt that they were faltering. I've cheered them on. Help me cheer on mine. This is no different than slowing a math lesson to meet the needs of other children. I'm asking kids to wear a mask to support my children, to help us keep our families safe. We do it every day in the education system. It is no different than taking peanut butter out of the cafeteria to protect one child with a peanut allergy. And we do it happily because we love our kids and we're a community. I'm asking you to help me now protect my baby, as I have helped support, love, cheer, and protect all of your babies for over 20 years now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Anyone else who, yep.
Hello, my name is Brad Creamer. I live right here in the town of Bath. I appreciate giving us the opportunity to speak tonight in this forum. I appreciate having Dr. Hannah here. Dr. Hannah has cared for my children, so I'm very appreciative of everyone that's here. Just wanted to bring up some statistics because I think everyone gets caught up in the percentages. You hear percentages up, percentages down. Just want to look at some numbers. So the state of Maine dropped the Maine indoor mask mandate on May 24th, 2021 for vaccinated people, which essentially turned into everyone reducing their masks, right? You could go to Walmart, you could go to the gas station. No one was checking your status. People were in public not wearing masks. At that time, the estimated active cases was 2,323 in the state of Maine. As of Friday, the Maine CDC's estimated active cases was 2,058. So yes, I understand that right now we're showing an uptick in cases, but we should pay attention to the actual numbers and not just percentage of increase, okay? The first case was reported of COVID and started tracking on March 12th of 2020, right? We've had some ups and downs in the states. We're very fortunate in this state that our numbers have been low, right? I actually work at Bath Iron Works in a teaching environment. We were essential workers. We went to work every day. Because of our environment, we're not able to wear masks. Because of the type of work, it's a fire hazard for us to wear masks. My crew of trainers, the students that I had to deal with on a daily basis, we had extremely low numbers at Bath Iron Works, considered the population. So I look at other information that seems to be overlooked. The fact that we have lower now than we did back when the mandate was dropped leads me to believe that, you know, the masking is not necessary at this time, considering we're lower than we were when we dropped the mask mandate. I look at the masks that people are wearing, right? Most people started ordering masks from Amazon, right? They're trying to get them from Walmart. They were hard to get for a while. So people order them. Most of those masks, consumer grade, have a disclaimer talking about extended use or reuse impacting the effectiveness, okay? I happen to think that an entire school day is extended use, okay? Kids are gonna reuse their masks. They're gonna take them off at lunch. They're gonna do snack. They're gonna take them off. They're gonna put them back on. Believing that that mask is gonna be effective for the entire day, I don't believe is a true intention of that mask. And then some specifically state on the box, they're not effective for protection against COVID-19. It's something that we need to consider is that a lot of people are wearing masks that are not N95. We see a lot of people wearing fancy colored masks. Maybe they bought the fabric at Joanne Fabrics. It's not medical grade masking. Yes, it makes people feel better about being in public with a lot of other people, but the reality is the effectiveness of those are very low. When we were at BIW dealing with COVID, if you were considered a close contact, it didn't matter if you were wearing a mask or not. We were sent home quarantine. That means that Bath Iron Works, one of the largest employers of the state, has no expectation of protection from a mask, okay? The CDC is also stating that whether you're vaccinated or not, you're in a situation where you may have to quarantine or you may have to wear a mask. So the effectiveness of the vaccine is debatable. I think that these children need an opportunity to learn. They need to see smiling faces of their teachers. They need to be in an environment where they can learn and not think about, am I in danger? And I think the masks give them that impression, right? I think a lot of kids are upset about the masks. And I believe that it's ignorant for any of us in this room to believe that when a kid walks out of this door to walk home, that they're keeping their mask on. They're walking home, they're hanging out with their friends, they're going to restaurants, they're doing kid things. They're not wearing their masks. So to have a picture of your school with all the kids wearing masks looks great. But the reality is that's not what's transpiring once the bell rings. And I think we need to be a little bit smarter about the environment we're putting our kids in with a mask. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep,
Hi.
go ahead.
My name is Annie Sarbanis. I live in Phippsburg. I am a mother of 5 children who are enrolled at RSU1 schools. I have something I'm going to read, or my own statements, and then I did bring a statement from one of my children. I believe I offer a unique insider's perspective. One, as a cancer patient, because I am the vulnerable that the community is trying to protect. And 2, as a COVID survivor, because I am the previously infected that science is ignoring. And 3, as a mom who's borne witness to the devastating impact that school closures and social isolation and masking protocols have burdened our children with. As a mother, I can share with you that every one of my kids came home from school complaining regularly of exhaustion and headaches. In addition, my 7th grader struggled with debilitating anxiety and depression throughout the school year. While she continued to strive academically, the pure load of it all weighed on her mental health and has likely changed her brain forever. My 4th grader was sent home from school on the 2nd day with strep throat and struggled with rashes on his face throughout the school year. It didn't matter how often we bleached, washed, changed, used the disposable mask. It didn't matter. And my 2nd grader, who has a very shallow nose bridge, spent the entire year getting in trouble from his teachers because his mask just would not stay put. And we tried all different kinds of masks. They just wouldn't stay put. He struggled with feeling like he was being naughty all year because a mask wouldn't stay on his little face. As a cancer patient, I can share with you that my own concerns from wearing a mask. I was diagnosed in June of 2020 at the height of the social distancing and masking protocols. I started treatment in July, and because of the restrictions, I attended each appointment masked and without a loved one to support me. Each week, I would walk into the building, put a mask on, and 15 minutes later, I would have my labs drawn. Every week, the only level that was off in my labs was my CO2. My providers assured me that's just from the masking. But my levels were high after 15 minutes, and we're asking our children to wear masks for 6 to 7 hours. What are their levels? Do we have the data? Do we have safety studies for keeping masks on our children for an extended period of time? There are lots of studies that show that it's not safe to occlude children's airways. But do we have studies showing that it is safe? Why are we not erring on the side of caution? I can tell you that as a high-risk individual, I am not asking my children to bear the burden. It is my responsibility to keep myself safe. And I do not wish that anyone suffer from any kind of COVID-related illness. As I can tell you, as a survivor, I can tell you that the fear of contracting the virus for me was far worse than the virus. I am one of the lucky ones that had very mild illness. And I know that is not the case. And I do not intend to stand here and say that it's no big deal, it's just a cold. I know people are dying. I know the severity. My symptoms were so mild when I contracted COVID that my providers who tracked my symptoms every week dismissed it as chemo-related. I don't wear short hair. It's just growing back. This is not a look I chose. My infection was confirmed through antibody testing weeks after my infection. My providers just wanted to rule it out to make sure, because my immunities were so low, because my white cells were low, they said, let's just check you. And sure enough, I have antibodies. So it was in fact SARS-CoV-2. All right. What we do know from the data the gentleman shared earlier, yes, the cases are up. Children are being affected by the Delta variant. I'm not a physician. I'm a mom. I'm a cancer patient, and I'm a survivor. That's what I am. What I can say is that from the data that I've seen, children are less likely to be affected by COVID than vaccinated adults at this point. Children are 10 times more likely to die in a car accident than they are of COVID. And we're not asking parents to not let their children get in cars. The CDC estimated that more children died in the 2019 and 2020 flu pandemic. Sorry, more children died from influenza in the 2019 flu season, and significantly more children in the 2017, 2018. And we weren't talking masks then. I know we're in the middle of a pandemic, but the burden is being placed unfairly on our children. They are not the ones being affected severely by this virus. I'm going to share now. Is it okay if I share now my 8th graders statement?
Sure.
Okay. I am an 8th grader at BMS. I'm writing to you today to ask to make masks optional for students and staff. Having to wear a mask in school has taken a toll on me individually and on many other students who attended school throughout the pandemic. For me personally, it increased my anxiety, and I know I am not alone because 1 in 4 children have attempted or seriously considered suicide. The toll on their mental health needs to be taken seriously. At the start of the pandemic and during distance learning, I started experiencing anxiety. My parents found me a therapist and I started taking anti-anxiety medication. On the days I was home, I had a lot less anxiety and the medication seemed to help. On the days that I was in school and had to wear masks, I had to take almost 3 times the amount that I would have to take when I was home, and it still didn't feel like it helped. When I had to wear a mask, it felt like it was very hard to breathe. I would get headaches frequently, and wearing the masks made me exhausted. I am an athlete, and I chose to play travel soccer instead of playing at the school team because of the mask requirement. I knew that if it was hard for me to walk and sit during the school day with a mask on, it would be even harder for me to run and exercise with a mask. PE was the most difficult class this year because my mask would get sweaty and wet and stick to my face. It was uncomfortable and utterly disgusting to breathe and wear. Having to wear masks made the environment feel restrictive in multiple ways. You couldn't understand what people were saying, and it was hard to hear our teachers. On top of that, we couldn't see people's faces to tell what they were feeling or what they were saying. It felt like our teachers were stressing out about how far apart we were and if we were wearing the masks correctly. It seemed like they spent more time telling us what not to do than they did teaching. My child is a high-achieving academic student. She is well loved by her community and by her teachers. So if she feels like her teachers spent more time reprimanding them and control, trying to mitigate, I can't imagine what teachers went through this year. I have no idea. I think that's something to be said. She's a good kid and she felt like she was constantly being reprimanded. It was hard not to be able to sit close to friends, hug them, or see their faces. I was called down to the office to receive the AAA award, and one of my best friends also received the award, and we couldn't hug each other to separate. I'm sorry, we couldn't hug each other to celebrate. Wearing masks forced separation amongst the students. I know some people want to wear masks, and they should be allowed to, but I also think that those of us who don't want to wear masks should be allowed not to as well. Everyone is talking about following the science, but there is no science behind mask wearing except that it can be harmful to cover children's mouths and noses for long periods of time. We're in school for 6.5 hours, plus many take the bus and have at least a 30-minute bus ride. That sounds like a long time to me. With the exception of lunch break and snack, we generally did not get mask breaks. It felt like the rules and guidelines were made for the comfort of the staff and not for the needs of the student. It is time for our needs to be heard and met. You have the ability to fight for the kids or continue to design the rules for the staff. This is not taking away the students and teachers' rights to wear masks. It is giving them a choice not to. You can get a train moving. You can't get a train moving without starting the engine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Julie Damon. I'm from Bath. Just a couple things. I hear a lot about the CDC says this, the CDC says that. And I was kind of wondering when I'm talking to people and I mentioned to them that I called the CDC a few months back, and I asked if they had, if anybody had called the CDC, people that either agree with me or disagree with me. Everyone mentions they haven't called the CDC. And I'm kind of curious of why people don't call the CDC, because when I want to know something, I tend to like to go to the source. I did call the CDC. They don't give me much information because they just read out of books and it's kind of tricky, but they recommended that I call Roger at the Maine State CDC, which I did call. He gave me lots of great information. And I'll just be very briefly about the counts, how the counts are made. Everybody's afraid of all these counts. All these people are dying with COVID, and the CDC, how they count that is they count it two different ways, with COVID and of COVID or by COVID. And Roger explained to me very detailed that if somebody dies, literally drowning or, drowning or getting hit by a bus or commit suicide, if they happen to test positive for COVID at time of death, it is a death with COVID, not of COVID, but it is counted as a COVID death. So that being said, if there's, 600,000 people they say have died of COVID or with COVID, you have to think those counts are going to be a lot lower. So that's something that anybody can call Roger at Maine State CDC. Also, too, if someone had been tested for COVID within 90 days of dying of something completely other than, an obvious COVID thing, if they got tested positive within the 90 days and did not go back for a confirmed negative test, that is counted also as a death with COVID, even if they would have had COVID 3 months before they got hit by a bus. That is counted as a death with COVID, which is counted as the COVID death rate. That's just some information anybody can get from calling Roger at Maine State CDC. So that also being said, the masks, I have a daughter who's going to be a senior this year. I'm highly considering, her dad and I are highly consider pulling her out. She actually likes wearing the mask not because she likes how it feels, but because she doesn't want to be different than everybody else. She wants to be the same as everybody else. Mom, everyone wears a mask. Don't make a big deal out of it. Everyone just wears a mask. And someone had said here, forgive me, they said that their 5-year-old thinks nothing of wearing a mask. That's a problem. That's a problem if children are thinking nothing of wearing a mask. And that is actually, I agree that that's true. They don't think anything of it. They should. You shouldn't want to have your face covered. You shouldn't want to not see people smiling and laughing. My grandson, I brought him to school a bunch of times. His first year, he was so excited to go to kindergarten, and he had to wear his mask all the time. And one time we couldn't find his mask in his backpack, and he panicked and started crying and said, "Oh, mammy, my mask, my mask!" And I said, "It's okay, buddy, we'll find it." It took us 30 seconds to find it, but he was in complete meltdown, thinking he did not have his mask to get to school. On the way to school, one time I was bringing him up. One of the kids walked by, dropped his mask, picked it up, wiped his nose with it, and put it on. So how are these masks keeping our kids healthy when they got everything else going on here, but just this perfectly clean mask? And I'm not going to sit here and say masks are not effective at all. I think if you have anything going on and you put a mask on and you cover your spit, it's going to help a little bit, obviously. It has been proven, and even on the CDC website that everyone seems to listen to, it has been proven that it's not all the way effective. There's a lot of things that can happen with the mask. But my daughter, who likes the mask, likes the way it looks. She does not like wearing it, and it bothers her. She doesn't like that. So instead of going to school and maybe pulling her mask down or taking breaks, she called me to come get her a lot of times because she had headaches. She couldn't breathe. My perfectly healthy 17-year-old daughter, after a couple of months of the masks, went to the doctors from having chest issues and now has an inhaler she gets to use when she can't breathe well. Never had that. We've never had that issue in our whole entire family. My grandchildren, same thing. They are home a lot with headaches. My grandkids missed a lot of school last year. My 2 youngest grandkids with headaches. And my daughter, and also you got to think of the teenagers that are wearing masks all day here and those that have part-time jobs outside. Sometimes my daughter would wear a mask all day here, come home for an hour, wear a mask 6 hours at work. So she was having a very hard time. And she also had me come get her at work several times because she had a headache. She couldn't breathe. One time she almost passed out at work. They had to take her mask off and give her some water and some cool cloths. So I think that, and let alone, I won't even go into the mental issue of the kids wearing masks all day long and missing seeing people's faces and seeing smiles. I had so much to say, but I think I'm not going to say most of it because I honestly 100% think I feel like this falls on deaf ears. I almost didn't come tonight because I thought I've been painting my house. I got more important things I can do. It's going to fall on deaf ears because that's where I have gotten for this past year, speaking to anybody who doesn't agree with me, falls on deaf ears. They just don't care. And that's how we feel, is that you just don't care. I am all for the whole, if you want your kid to wear a mask, please send your kid to school in a mask. Go ahead. We who don't feel that we want our kids to be masked, we're okay if you want your kids masked. We're not going to call you, or I'm not going to call you a bad parent. I'm not going to criticize you the way I've been criticized for not having masks. But I rise above that because it's called a choice. It's called parents that have a choice with their children. If you are that afraid, don't send your kid to school. Just don't. If you're that terrified, if I was so terrified that my 5-year-old or my 17-year-old was going to die going to school, I would do anything I could to keep them home. Just don't send them. Just a couple stats I have right here, really quick. I looked it up in the parking lot on the CDC site that you all love so much. 19 deaths. Now we have to remember, these are counted as deaths with COVID. Doesn't mean they actually died of COVID. It means they died somehow, and maybe they had COVID. 19 deaths under the age of 18 in 2020. 195 deaths from the flu under the age of 18 in 2020. Close to 600 cases of death under 18 from the flu in 2018. 477 deaths under 18 from the flu in 2019. So anyone in this room who preaches about their kids wearing a mask during COVID and has not masked their kids during flu season every year of their life is a hypocrite. Thank you.
Thanks. Could I ask if others are interested in speaking, and there were many more who raised their hands, if you could just start maybe making a line over on the side of the room, just so it moves a little bit, the transition moves a little bit better. If you could just stand over on the side. There you go. Thanks. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Linville McDonough from Bath, Maine. Well, obviously Maine. And I have bipolar disorder since I was 7. So I have lived with depression almost my entire life. So I know what it's like for these kids who are anxious because of the masks, supposedly. But I think the reason why they're anxious is because they're not with their peers all the time. We spent most of the year, sorry, I'm shaking. We spent most of the year without being around our peers. I went one day of school, one day off school, one day of school, one day off school. It was chaos. I had no schedule and routine down. I didn't know what was going on half the time. I would wake up and not know if I was going to school and see my peers. So some of the anxiety might have come from that. And I get not being able to breathe. That's why we had mask breaks. And halfway through the year, I get that we kind of lost those, but some teachers still had them, and those were good. And the people who say, well, my mask got wet. Why didn't you bring a second one? I had a backpack full of masks. Why didn't you bring a second one? So I really get that the anxiety and depression has gone up, but we have so much support in this school system. I have been in the school system my whole life, and I have with depression, and I've always been supported. So I know this school can handle those kids. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Hi.
Does this thing go down?
I don't know. Well, we'll get Damien to move it down for you.
I'm gonna read something I wrote. Dear RSU1 School Board.
Could you just give us your name first?
Oh yeah, I'm Aaliyah and I'm 11 years old and I'm from Phippsburg, Maine.
Okay, thanks, Aaliyah.
Dear RSU1 School Board, I'm a fifth grader at Phippsburg Elementary School. I am here to ask masks to be optional in schools. I had to go to school 5 days a week for 7 hours plus 30-minute bus ride. To be honest with you, that is unacceptable. We should at least have been able to take our masks off on the bus when we were sitting with our brothers or sisters. Our bus driver was able to take off his mask and we could not. When we complained about him to the teachers, they thought we were scared of him, but we were just trying to make things fair for the kids. Some of the masks I had to wear were really thick and I could barely breathe. Our mask breaks were not very long. I don't like that I could not see my friends' faces, and it was hard to know what they were saying to me when they were mouthing something. My teacher had to wear a speaker once or twice to get some kids to listen to her. On a really hot day, the masks would stick to your face, and it feels like we can't take it off to breathe. The teachers would get angry at us for putting our masks below our nose to breathe for a second. They would yell at us. During guidance, we would sit in our lunch spots. When during lunch, we could take off our masks, but during guidance, our teacher wouldn't let us, which made no sense. We were 6 feet apart, and if it was safe during lunch to take off our masks, why wasn't it safe during guidance? Teachers get mask breaks for 45 minutes while our class is at specials, but kids don't get 45 minutes mask breaks. The longest we get is 15 to 20 minutes at lunch, and that is half the time the teachers get. The masks make me feel like we are getting treated differently, and that the teachers are more important than the kids, and that the adults get to break their own rules, but the kids can't. A girl in my class has asthma, and she had to wear a mask during gym, which I think is unfair because she had to run to get her inhaler from the nurse. My brother got impetigo, which is a rash, from wearing a mask 2 times during the school year. I had a lot of headaches, and I feel like I can't do masks any longer. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you, Amelia.
These guys are a hard act to follow. I'm Rue Dunn. I live in Bath, and I'm calling for RSU1 to mandate masks and the other appropriate controls, understanding this is a moving target, and you're going to revise that from time to time. The board needs to show leadership to fulfill its responsibility to the greater good. What does the greater good mean? We wear seat belts. We show off the holes in our socks at the airport. We get a hunting license. We get a driver's license. We pay taxes. These things are instituted in communities, in our state, in the country, to promote safety, education, for the greater good of every resident and every family and every child. It's the duty, the responsibility, and it should be the expectation of the administration and the board to follow the strongest application of the appropriate protocols and controls. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hello, my name's Amber Herzog. I'm from West Bath. I have one daughter going into 4th grade at West Bath School and one starting at BMS. I agree with a lot of the things that the previous people have said, not in favor of masking, so I'm not going to read everything. But I think it is important to say that we had a hard time in the back hearing everything Dr. Hannah said. But I know it is important to say that Maine is not like the rest of the country. When the CDC did say the sort of the broad generalization that masks should be worn indoors, I thought, well, that's not really fair. You know, there's 20 million people in Florida, say, and then, you know, compared to our population, we've always had lower rates of infection during any modern day outbreak than the rest of the country has. And we do have a higher vaccination rate, even if it's not quite where they want it yet, it is higher. I don't feel that it makes sense that our children can go to restaurants full of people, sporting events, community events, sometimes with hundreds of people, and that is considered to be okay, but then ask them to wear masks at school. All summer and throughout the school year, our kids have been gathering for birthday parties, sleepovers, they ride in cars together. So West Bath School, as you guys know, but some of you may not, was 5 days a week full time. So the kids would get out of school and they were all in their little circles, and then we would say, okay, you two are coming with us, we're having a sleepover, you know, and so they'd pile into the car together, take their masks off, and so it just doesn't make sense. Last August, the CDC said, if you're in a room with, and I'm paraphrasing, if you're in a room with someone for longer than 15 minutes, you are breathing in their air particles unless you're wearing an N95 mask, which most of us do not. So why did a lot of people not get sick? I 100% believe it's attributed to the strict protocols that schools have been following regarding keeping kids, sick kids home, and that most of us have been following everywhere we go. It used to be acceptable for a child to go to school sick. They just couldn't have a fever. You could send them sneezing, coughing. It didn't matter. As long as they didn't have a fever, they were allowed to go. I mean, even we would go out in public with a cold as long as we didn't feel extremely sick. So people are washing their hands for a lot longer. I work on people daily. I do electrolysis. I am from here to the microphone to people's faces all through the year, except for when we were shut down. I had a mask on, but my clients did not. There were no vaccinations then. A lot of the people in my industry are working in this close proximity with clients who did not have masks, and there was no sickness. I never got sick, but I never let someone through the door who was sick or showing any sort of symptoms. Not a single person sneezed in my office this past year, which I think is just kind of funny. It just shows like people are more cautious and more considerate. Before it was okay, now it's not. Yes, the Delta variant, you know, they're showing, okay, it's spreading in children finally, you know, where the regular COVID wasn't, but the severity is important to look at. They're not, it's like a mild cold to them. It is not so extreme. And that's very important. Our children's psychological and neurological development depends on seeing faces. My children are getting older. I have a cousin whose son is going into kindergarten. They need to see expressions. Many parents locally and all around the country have spoken up saying their kids have suffered from not being able to breathe. A lot of what everyone has said. Getting headaches, bad acne, which is very embarrassing as a child is growing up. Cognitive fog and depression. My children have complained of some of these as well, mostly headaches and just feeling like they just can't breathe. People say children are resilient. They dealt with it well and will again, but it's not necessarily true. I feel that children listen because really they don't have a choice. We sort of tell them this is what you're going to do. You know, you're going to the grocery store, you're doing whatever we tell you and you have to. They're not like us. They can't really say no. So they just had to deal with it. And I don't feel this is an acceptable way to treat our children. They need to be heard. My daughter going to Bath Middle School is terrified, not just because it's middle school, but she happens to be all the girls in the the classes at West Bath are in a different house. So she's very, she's only with the boys. And so she doesn't know any of the teachers. She's all new faces and everyone's just going to look like, you know, Wilson from Home Improvement. So I really feel like we need to have a choice. I think it's the country we live in. We need to do what we feel is right. The Bonnie Eagle School District, which includes Buxton, Hollis, Leamington, Standish, and Fry Island, is going to have masks be optional. Lewiston, very big school district, has approved a motion that makes mask wearing optional, with the superintendent saying, and I quote, "This is a personal family decision." I think we need to continue screening. No sick kids at school. We did the little app every morning. And continue proper hygiene, such as hand washing. And then I think we'd have a safe school year. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hi, my name is John Dever. I live in Bath, and I'm also a teacher here at Morse High School. And I have a son who graduated in 2020 out at the airport, and I have a son who's a junior here this year. You know, there's no question teaching last year, the mask affected teaching. But I really think we're at a point where, you know, we have to think about the least bad choice. When I look at the whole trajectory of COVID, you know, it starts in China and people think, well, gosh, that's terrible. Thank goodness that's not happening here. And then we looked at those horrific scenes in Italy. We said, boy, so glad it's not happening here. And then we saw New York and the West Coast. But boy, we're really glad that's not happening here. And now we're seeing Louisiana and Florida and Texas where healthcare systems are collapsing, and we're saying, we sure are glad that's not happening here. I think it's obviously the new variant, and it's a new school year. We're gonna be moving into the autumn where people are gonna be inside a lot more than we have been for the last several months. And I think the least bad option is to be conservative about trying to have a level of community protection, and at least to start the year with masks until we see what's going on with this thing. Because at some point it might not be some other place. It might be here that we're seeing those horrific images and seeing those tragic stories. So I think we really need to at least consider starting the year masking up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kristen Pierce. I have 3 high schoolers, a junior, a sophomore, a freshman, and a 7th grader. Also have a 15-month-old at home. This is my first school board meeting that I'm coming to, and I wasn't even planning to come because I feel like it was already set in stone what was going to happen, that this was just a step that they had to take in order to kind of hear everyone out. I work in a nursing home. I've been there for 12 years. We had the flu pandemic that hit. It was optional for masks in that situation. We had 3 residents die in a week. We did have a case of COVID in our building. There was like 3 or 4 people that tested positive. No deaths in our facility. I think that the mask should be not mandated, but optional for those who want to wear them. Everyone has come up to this microphone. It hasn't been sanitized. Everyone's been touching it. People have been, it's just like someone's face maybe. I mean, I don't see a covering over that or sanitizing that. I'm losing my train of thought coming up here. I don't speak in public, but I do know that these disposable masks, there's these little particles inside of them called Magellans. They're supposed to be removed every 20 minutes. You're only supposed to wear them for 20 minutes. Learned that in the healthcare. They were pushing it before this whole thing happened. Yeah, so I wonder what the fibers or what you guys are inhaling in the other masks. I mean, everyone washes with different detergents. I mean, it's not good for your systems. Yeah, I guess there's not, I don't know, but that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Thanks. No, somebody has to do it.
A little taller, thank you.
I'm Karen De Silva. I live in Bath. I have a couple kids, a new 9th grader, excited to go to this school, and a 7th grader. And I just wanted to say, and not one person stood up here and said something that didn't make sense. I mean, this isn't really an issue that should be polarizing people. I mean, I think as a society, there are things that we just have to let other people make decisions about. I mean, my kid absolutely loves peanut butter, and I can't send him a peanut butter jelly sandwich every day, and he would eat it 3 times a day. You know, there are just things that we're going to have to decide who gets to make those decisions. I mean, we were just at the doctor's today. I mean, we as a family don't like taking, giving our kids prescriptions. We have a kid that had a lot of asthma problems when he was in 5th grade, and immediately they wanted to put him on a protocol. And we were like, we would really, as parents, we would like to slow this down a bit and understand maybe what the problem is and maybe try to eliminate some of the things that might be causing the sneezing or the rash or the coughing. And I think that there are places where we can voice our opinions. Like, I mean, everybody said something that was really valid, but really, can we do that? Can we cross this line and then say we get to decide that our kid doesn't get like the vaccination at 12 that the whole state and country has said that we have to do? I mean, I'm definitely not a fan of a mask. I'm wearing it today because there's a suggestion. I got my vaccination. My 14-year-old has his vaccination. We play by the rules. I mean, I'm a squeaky wheel. I like to give you my opinion when things are not, what it needs to be. But I also respect that I don't think you guys should be making a decision. You should be following along with what the bigger decision is. And I don't want to see my kid wearing a mask, but if it means that we have to try it in September and just see where it is, and if things start to flatten out a bit, that we can open up a discussion of maybe like what is possible or what is optional if they're already vaccinated. I'm really all for that conversation. But I just wanted to get up there and say that we all care about our kids. We all care about our neighbors, but like there are things that are set in our community, and there are places that we look to when we need these are big, hard decisions. It's not up to a parent or a kid, or a grandparent. I mean, we trust that, even though they're hard decisions, and even though sometimes it's really more cautious than maybe realistic, but that everything is, seen as factors, and that risk has to be taken into consideration so that the best decision is made. So anyway, that's what I had to say.
Thanks, Karen.
My name is Tammy. I'm from Woolwich, and I actually really appreciate us being able to have the opportunity to actually share different thoughts and giving some new thought to things that we thought maybe we thought this about masks or that, to be able to come together as a community and kind of discuss all the options that are out there. And there are very many different opinions based on this. So what do I do when I hear tons of different opinions about something? Is I actually try to go and look at the facts. And so when I go to look at the facts, I say, well, why are they trying to have our children wear masks? So I say, well, what is the infection rate in our children for the virus? Does anyone know? What's the chance of our children dying from the virus? Yeah,
I'm going to ask you to address the board.
Oh,
if you
sorry.
would. Yeah, okay.
So
This is your chance to talk to us,
Thank
not
you.
to engage in a.
Oh, thank you for
yeah,
that. I'm
okay,
sorry.
I'm sorry.
So when I look at that, as far as the survival rate, I suggest you guys might do some, if you haven't already, some research in regards to our children. for their survival rate from COVID-19. The other thing that is concerning to me is I'm watching people in their habits. They're adjusting their nose piece, they're adjusting their ear piece, they're handling their pens, they're putting their pens up to their face. So I'm watching how this behavior is, and I'm like, watching a 5-year-old come into kindergarten having just gone to the bathroom, come in, and so what do they culture from these masks? And there's actually some parents that actually took that upon themselves to do, and they're finding things like staph, Legionnaires, Corynebacterium, Streptococcus, Neisseria, Actinomyces, E. coli. A lot of these lead to respiratory pneumonia. And the other thing that is something like, I'm actually a veterinarian, and we have a disease in brachiocephalic dogs that is brachiocephalic syndrome, and it's a restrictive airway disease. Those dogs will most likely experience heart disease and airway disease later in life because of that restriction. So I think, well, what is that doing to our kids, having that kind of restriction? The other is the development on the immunity. Our kids are not getting exposed every day viruses and bacteria because we're protecting them. And you got to be careful about protecting kids too far. You've got to let them develop their own natural immunity. Having a son that had COVID, he's having some after effects, but I'm glad that he is okay. When he had it, it was scary, and how we managed our household was definitely, different than somebody that was not, but we didn't wear mask in our own house. The other thing that's concerning to me is the mental health of masking our kids, and many of the people that have come up to speak have spoken about that. And there just recently was a release from Brown University, so you guys might research that up, about lower cognitive skills and lower IQ. The other thing that is concerning is we're teaching our kids to be afraid of the air. That to me does not make any sense. And also the filtration rate of various masks can be variable. The coronavirus is 1 micron. Most cloth masks do not go down to 1 micron. And that has been talked about previously. So I won't belabor that too much because I know you guys have a lot. But somebody had asked earlier, and this has a little bit to do with this in regards to vaccinations. The VAERS report is a really good one to look at, and I am discouraging strongly my young adult children to not get the vaccine because of myocarditis. We don't know the long-term effects on reproductive organs. The virus has some spike proteins that tend to go into the ovaries and the testes. What does that have an effect on our future generation of grandchildren? That is concerning to me. There's also reports in there about thrombocytopenia, immune-mediated thrombocytopenia, antigenic upregulation, autoimmune disease. So, not to belabor that part, but there's also been over 4,000 deaths associated with the vaccine in this area, if you will, in the United States. But worldwide, there's been 45,000 deaths associated with the vaccine. So we don't have the information for long-term studies from that vaccine. So that's one of my heartburn and concerns about the vaccine. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks. No, okay.
10 more seconds.
Well,
I have to go to work, but I want to say, stop dismissing us. Please listen to us. Those of us that have spoken tonight about not wearing masks for our kids, stop dismissing us. We are tired of being dismissed. Thank you.
Please, would you approach the mic? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Carly Fuller. I'm from Woolwich. I have 4 students in the RSU1 currently, and I don't have an opinion about masks. I don't have an opinion. I feel like if the doctor that runs our district says we should wear masks, then we should. If people don't feel like their kids should wear masks, I completely understand that also. I have kids with physical issues that are caused or exacerbated by masks. I have kids with mental health issues whose mental health was devastated this year by not being in a school building, by not being with their schoolmates, with not being able to look at their teacher and say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, could you help me with this project? Because they were teaching another class. They need to be in school. They need to be with their peers. They need to have access to their educators in a capacity that is not email or Zoom. If masking our kids is what it takes to get them in a physical building, participating in the activities that they love to do, like sports and theater and music and volunteering, I am for masks if that will get them back to school. So I really appreciate all of the work that you've put into it. I know that you have educated yourselves, and I really hope that you consider that when you're talking about masking. Will it get the kids back to some semblance of normal for them? And that's what I hope for all of our kids. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Anybody else who wants to?
Hi, my name is Rachel Rowan. I have 4 kids that go to school. 1's going to Morris, 3 to go to Phippsburg. But I just want to say that I agree with her. And if that's what you guys decide, which sounds like it's already set, which is fine by me, but I'm not a very political person. I can barely take care of my house half the time. But if we have to wear masks and we have to wear masks, I would rather dig my own eyes out than teach my kids at home. For real. Like, I can't do that ever again. God bless teachers. I'm not it. But I do want to say that I do appreciate everything you guys are doing. I'm not for masks. I feel like my kid's my choice, but I'm not keeping them home. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Okay, unless there's anyone else, I'm going to close the public comment. Oh, we have someone else.
Hi, I'm Carol Reese, Phippsburg. I guess my one question I would have for the board is, or kind of a statement, a lot of these kids are having emotional issues, stress, headaches, a lot of anxiety from the mask. So something to consider, if you're going to make masks mandatory, will there be a loophole for those kids that really do suffer, or at least consider something, because this is real for a lot of kids, a lot. So I really think that is something that you should be considering, because it really should be up to the parents if the kids wear the masks or not. My kid, my choice.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. All right, I don't see anyone. Oh.
Hi, sorry to be the last person to stand up, but this is my name is Kara Martin Tatro. I'm from Bath. My daughter is a rising sophomore, so she's kind of feels like a lost freshman, because I say, oh, homecoming, and she's like, I didn't do that. Or, oh, we get to remember shopping for your 8th grade prom. She's like, no, Mom, that was Ella, that wasn't me. I'm like, oh, right, you didn't get to do those things. And her older sister, who graduated from Morse in 2019, talks about all the things that she loved about her years at Morse. And once again, my rising sophomore doesn't have perspective. So that being said, I'm here at my first school board meeting to support the work that you're doing and whatever it takes so our kids can go to school, and so my daughter knows what homecoming is. And so I could take her shopping for a dress, and we can have the graduation on the turf field and all those things that we all remember. My mom graduated from Morse in '66. She has Morse traditions that she wants to talk to her granddaughter about. So really quickly, I just want to say I support what you're doing and whatever it takes to ensure the safety of our students, but also the teachers, because my oldest daughter, who graduated from Morse in 2019, she turned out to be she volunteered to substitute and her phone has been ringing off the hook every single day because they need teachers at Dyke Newell, West Bath, BMS, Fisher Mitchell. She's actually at Bowdoin, and on her days off, she would come and substitute for some extra money. But her phone rings nonstop because staff had to go out because they were exposed. And that disruption is terrible for the teachers, but it's also really awful for the kids. My daughter was a 4th grade substitute for Fisher Mitchell for a week. And those poor kids, they're struggling with the mask. They're struggling with, they can't touch their friends. They're struggling with, being on a screen in the classroom, but then they also are worried about their teacher. And when is their teacher going to come back? So if there are ways that we can think about addressing a lot of the things I heard today that I didn't know, that are real concerns, giving kids mask breaks and helping to normalize this a little bit until we can get healthy and better. I think I just encourage you I support what you're doing. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. Oh, okay.
Carol Reese, again, one more thing another point I wanted to make, I forgot to mention before was, another issue is if with these masks, are we going to be, are you going to do something right across the board as far as, okay, we're all going to have to wear masks. Now, is this going to involve athletics? Because, that's a whole nother thing. And these kids are finally getting back into the sports. And I have, my son is a 7th grader at BMS, so he's gonna be gearing up with those football pads, his helmet, his mouth guard, and hopefully not a mask. So that's another thing that we need to be thinking about, as far as it's hard. Kids, the enrollment rate in sports is down so much. And just the thought of them having to wear a mask again during sports season the kids are just they're going to drop again. So, my daughter, same thing. She's a goalie for the field hockey team. She's got all her gear. It's hard. It is not easy. None of you guys have done what they did on the sports field with a mask on, none of you. And it's hard, it's not easy. So if you are looking at masks for the school, please reconsider doing something different for the athletics programs, because that is hard. I don't want to see the kids do that again. So.
Okay, thank you. So now I am really going to close the public comment section of the meeting. I want to thank everyone who offered comment. It was said a couple times that those comments fell on deaf ears and that the decision is set in stone. And but I can assure you, speaking for myself, and I know speaking for other board members, that's not the case. We listen intently to each other. We listen intently to the public, and that it would be a misconception to think that your comments here tonight were not absorbed by the board, and I think will factor into any decision. Factor into the decision-making process as we move forward. So I'm going to end the meeting. I do want to just give you a note. Like I said, we received about 45 written comments that came in, and those comments can continue to come in if you choose to submit a written comment after tonight's meeting. Of those comments, a fairly significant number were in support of masking mandate. About 37 of those, 8 not in support of masking. So, there was a pretty overwhelming number of those written comments that supported masking. We are going to be meeting in our regular session, a regular board meeting on August 23rd. Which is next Monday. And I think at that point, we will take action on this question and set, at least over a short term, set the direction of the district, whether it be masks or no masks. I think it was said any number of times by Dr. Hannah, by members of the board, asking the question as well. Whatever we decide, however we start the school year, I think there's a very high probability that that's not the way we're going to end the school year. So this is a very quickly changing situation, and we will revisit this question as often as necessary. We regularly meet monthly, but if there's new information that presents itself that we need to act on, we'll meet as often as necessary to keep up with this rate of infection. And if the opportunity is there that requires us to change the direction, again, whether it be masking or no masking, we will meet and consider that question. So, okay, if there isn't any other comments from the board, I'm going to, yep, go ahead, Lorna.
Thank you, Steve. It was more, can you hear me all right? Sounds like I'm not as loud as I was before, but you can hear me. Okay. So just if we have, while we're all here together, if we kind of took notes and some comments or have questions about some of the preventative measures, can I just send that? Like, for example, on pool testing, Dr. Carr had mentioned something and Dr. Hannah had kind of alluded to. I have a notion of how helpful that could be, but if I want clarification, can I send that question to you?
Yeah, send it to Patrick and we'll get answers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is for everyone who spoke tonight, I know it'll be on the record on the video. Do we get a list of people who spoke tonight, or can we get one? Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Lorna. Okay, so if I could get a motion to adjourn. Okay, we have a motion by Lou, second by Jen. All in favor? Thank you. And thank you out there. Thanks.